All right, so we're ready to get started on learning more about how do we hear God's voice, how do we be led by the Spirit, and we have already went over that the number one way that the Holy Spirit leads us and that we can hear God's voice is through the inward witness. So the Holy Spirit living in our spirit. So it's kind of like this. This is a good analogy, or kind of like a way to explain it, is that when I say that the first way is to be led by the inward witness, I'm not saying by an audible voice. I'm saying this is kind of like what we would describe as like a spiritual sense. And also, please understand, this is not like something weird or mystical or new age or whatever. That's absolutely not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in your spirit, the Holy Spirit leading you by that spiritual sense, or that unction, that knowing in your spirit when you should do something, when you should not do something. Kind of like it's a red light, green light thing. Okay, so you start to do something and you get that pushback inside of you, knowing that like this is not the right thing, or I should not go here right now, or I should go here right now. I should do this. I should give this. I should not say this. I should say this. Whatever it is. So it's that red light, green light. That's a really good analogy, I think, is kind of like you get a stop or you get a go. You get the red light to stop. You get the green light to go or move forward. So that's the number one way that the Holy Spirit is going to lead you, is through that inward witness. And a lot of times, some of us want to be led outwardly because we live in a natural world and we have our five senses, and but we have to remember that even though we live in the natural, here on earth, we are a spirit. God is in our spirit, and that is how He is speaking to us. So we have to remember, and we really want to think more in line with the spirit than we are with the natural. Okay, so we have to train and develop ourselves to do that, because naturally speaking, we're going to sometimes want, like, you hear people say like, why can't God just like drop it out of the sky and all of those things? But if He did that all the time, would it require faith? No, absolutely not. So we have to learn to listen and to be led by that inward witness. Remember that verse in Proverbs 20:27 that says that the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. So your spirit is the candle of the Lord. So think about that. That's how He wants to lead and guide you, is through your spirit, through that sense that you get inside of your spirit when you're praying about, should I do this? Should I not do this? Or like I say, it could just be, you hear all the time, people will say like, I was supposed to go here, but I just got that sense like I shouldn't go. And they didn't go, and then, there was an accident, or there was this or that. That is why this really is, it's a matter of life or death, that we learn to be led by the Spirit, that we learn to be sensitive to His voice, because we have all these other things going on around us. And it's so easy not to hear His voice because we're tuned in to all these other things, and we've got all these other things vying for our attention, and we're trying to do a good job at all the things. But we've got to stop, and we've got to get quiet before Him and learn to be quiet and listen, so that we know when He's leading us, when He's guiding us, to start our day with our focus on the Spirit, on His things, so that we're tuned into Him. That's the first thing, is get tuned into Him so that you can hear His voice, so that you can hear that and recognize that spiritual sense, that you will know, yes, that's Him. I wasn't, imagining it or whatever. And that this takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to learn to be led and to hear that voice, to be sensitive to it. and it will, it just like anything, it just gets easier and becomes more natural the more you are tuned into His voice and know that when the Holy Spirit is leading you through that inward witness, because that's the number one way that He's going to lead us is through the inward witness. So we got to learn to be led inwardly and not outwardly, even though we live in a natural world, and our natural inclination is just to be led by our senses, because that's what we're used to in our flesh. But we're a spirit, so we're going to learn to be led by the Spirit. So that's number one.